Welcome to Leave No Doubt. I'm pleased that this episode has been sponsored by Connection Technologies, and I'm also pleased to have been joined by an ex-teammate, a very old ex-teammate, Joel Ward, currently Crystal Palace. Joel, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good.
Thank
I'm
you.
not so sure about the extra old, though.
Yeah, extra old, man. That would like us to give people some context. Obviously, listening to this, me and Joel were teammates when we were very young. I was released at Portsmouth at 15. Joel went obviously on to make 95 appearances for the first team, maybe 95 league appearances, and over 100 in all competitions, which is incredibly impressive. And that, leads me perfectly on to my first question, mate. Really is the statistics on players making it into the first team from a young age of being involved in an academy is something like 0.01 something. You were in Portsmouth's academy from obviously a very early age and ended up, like we just said, making a lot of appearances for the first team. What do you think it was about you that's able to be within that 0.01% of players that obviously go from youth team to first team?
I think for me, the biggest thing for me was always my attitude. Two things: to make sure that I always gave 100% in whatever I was doing. My parents always used to say to me, whatever you're doing, do it with excellence. And I tried to implement that in every area of my life going forward. And, I don't think I was ever the most gifted. And I think, some of the players that we grew up with and playing, and some of the lads who were in the squad and at the academy, and, well, it was School of Excellence at the time, so it's not the academy, but even in the scholarship side of things, it was all, there was far more talented players. But I think, the hard work and the sacrifices that I made and the commitment I had to trying to make it was, what maybe set me apart.
I might get you to move that microphone, Wardy, just a little bit closer to your mouth as it goes in and out. If you just shift it to wherever you like, mate, that might be a little bit better.
Is that better?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
You're right, mate. And obviously from a very early age, that sort of attitude and hard work that you had was apparent really in every training session, obviously every match day. When did you become aware that, or not maybe aware of what hard work was, because obviously, you're saying your parents had that influence on you from a very early age, but when did you realise what hard work looked like from a football perspective specifically?
I guess I think I was one of the last ones to get told about my scholarship. I think it was between me and one other lad, and it obviously it came through that it was me, and my old man was driving me to school one day and just said, listen, how would you feel about if you got your scholarship, and how would you feel if you didn't get your scholarship? And I laid out kind of my thoughts and my process and my plan and what I kind of wanted to try and achieve. And I guess when he told me that I had got it, there was something inside me that was like, right, okay, the podcast is Leave No Doubt. It was kind of like, right, okay, what am I going to do, and how am I going to put in place things that give me the best chance and the best opportunity to make a career out of what I love to do. And I've always lived by, I don't want to have any regrets. There might be things that I might do differently, and when you look back, go, okay, I may have done this slightly differently. If I got another chance to go back and do it. But for me, I don't want to have any regrets. I want to make sure that I give everything I've got. And I guess from that moment when I had the scholarship on the table, I was kind of like, right, I've got to almost make this happen. And, I can be the best, I can be the most talented, I can be whatever. But if I don't put and apply myself in the right way, and I don't put in the hard work, then, I'm not going to succeed. I'm not going to achieve what I want to achieve. And get to where I want to get to.
I'm not sure what it was about me, Wardy, maybe during that time, but I never really felt like I was going to get one. I never really had that dilemma that you had about, like, I'm not sure if they're going to give me one or not. I sort of just felt like, it's not going to happen for me. But when you obviously mentioned that you felt like you were one of the last to get a scholarship, was that something that you were actually aware of? Like, because obviously we all knew that, Matty Ritchie, obviously, who's been on the podcast, got one when he was like 14, 15 and and he was sort of like the outstanding player in that group at that time. But I can't remember any of the rest of the guys at that age group being like super talented or definitely gonna get one. So what did you know? What was it like? Obviously during that period of time when you're sort of mentioning that you thought you were one of the last. Like, what did that do for you? Because the reason why I say that, I've heard Declan Rice talking about it, how that he was part of a youth team, I think at West Ham, that players were given scholarships and professional contracts, and he was just given a scholarship, which he felt like at the time was a little bit of not a knockoff, but it wasn't as good as what other people had got. And I'm sort of questioning whether, because you thought I was one of the last to get one, that it maybe gave you the extra determination and extra hunger to sort of maybe surpass those guys that you thought you were picked after,
Yeah, I guess I haven't really thought about it in that context, but for me, I just knew that no one's going to work as hard as what I am. No one's going to put in much hours or do extras as much as what I can do, and I was going to give everything I had and kind of leave everything out on the pitch when I went out there and try and do as much extra or try and do whatever I can to give myself the opportunity. I guess, being one of the, I think there was a certain like cut-off period where you were able to get your scholarship or something like that. It might have been a date or a time or something like that. And I think, I went to bed, I think the night that my dad got the call, and it wasn't until the following day that we were driving into school, and that's when I kind of knew. So it wasn't even that I had a conversation with Portsmouth and then was offered it. It was Wardy's gone to bed, so they told my old man. So it was kind of an odd one like that. But I think as well, for me, I owe Portsmouth a lot, because growing up I only ever played once a month for Portsmouth. I obviously played for teams outside of Portsmouth on Saturdays or whatever, but until it was under 16s we played on Sundays. So I only ever played once a month, but they honoured our commitment with our faith and church and stuff like that. And even going through that process, I knew that when it came time, I just had to give everything.
Yeah, I was interested, obviously, to ask you about that, Wardy, because we were aware of that as players, obviously, that we'd see you, once a Sunday in a month, and that wasn't anything that anyone questioned really at the time. That was just your circumstances. That was just the situation you were in, obviously, with your family and your faith and stuff. And did that add to your hunger to play professional football? Like, how did you manage to balance that relationship, obviously, with the church and your desire to become a professional footballer? I'm so excited to welcome to the pod our new sponsors, Connection Technologies, a market leader in business-to-business tools ranging from business mobile, hosted telephony and fixed line services. Head over to their website at www.connection-technologies.co.uk, fill in their web inquiry form and find out how Connection Technologies can help your business.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think nowadays it's slightly different because there's multiple services throughout the week, Sundays, Saturdays, whatever it is. So it's not as much of an issue nowadays. But I think, back then, because we were so heavily involved with the church, Sundays was kind of a bit of a write-off. So that's why I think my parents had decided that was the way in which that we were going to do things. And I think in that moment and in that time, as I'm sure any young kid, teenager would, everyone was kind of like, hold on a second, I just want to play football. Why can't I go and play every week? But I knew that for me, and looking back on it now and kind of reflecting on it, I knew, making that stance and honouring that was the best decision I've kind of ever made. And I think, it's almost quite a incredible story to go, hold on a second, I only played once a month for X amount of years until I was under 16s for Portsmouth, yet I kind of bucked the trend and was part of that 0.01% or whatever it may be.
So, I mean, why do you think that is then? I know it's like it's sort of a real like not specific question to ask. I know obviously on Saturdays we actually played in the same Saturday team for quite a while. You were at East Lodge for years, right? We had some sort of Galacticos East Lodge team for a while that was good fun to play in. But why do you think it, how do you think you did develop then as a player? Do you think you were doing enough in obviously in training sessions, or like what do you think you managed to not lose out on by missing sort of match days on a Sunday and obviously for 3 weeks out of a month?
I guess my circumstances of where I grew up, I was outside constantly playing football. I had an older brother who was competitive and playing football. He was at Portsmouth and Chelsea, and I think he was at Southampton for a time as well. And so I was kind of playing with them and playing up ages and what have you when I was playing with them and training and everything. So that developed a little bit of just a competition and healthy competition between us. And also being in that environment where you've kind of got your backs against the wall when you're the smallest, you're the youngest, and you've got to kind of fight your way through it. So I guess for me, I just kind of, I guess my determination to succeed and my determination to give myself the best chance.
I think, a lot of the time, what you don't really, obviously, like you'd probably listen to most football player stories and the word hard work. I was hard working and I worked hard. Obviously, that gets spoken about quite a lot. But I wonder with you, like what specifically did hard work mean to you, and what did it look like? Like how did it reflect in your football lifestyle? Like what sort of stuff are you actually doing? Maybe in those sort of like scholarship years when you're saying I was desperate to work harder than everybody else. I was desperate to do more extras because I know for a fact that Matt Ritchie was thinking the same thing. So how were you able to obviously pursue those desires that you had to work hard, but what also did that literally look like? Like what was it that you were doing?
I guess like for me, there was a lot of gym based stuff that I would do externally after training, even away from training. Obviously on the pitch, I'd want to speak to the coaches. I'd want to kind of develop. I want to kind of stay after and learn. Watching as well, watching the first team, kind of just trying to be around it and trying to get a feel for the environment that they work in. And I guess as well, even, I touched on it earlier about the sacrifices. I think for me, I remember we had a code of conduct that we all signed as scholars. When it was like, right, okay, you can't be out past this time. You can't be in certain environments or this, that, and the other. And for me, I kind of eliminated all the distractions because I knew I wasn't necessarily the most talented, but I knew that if I kind of applied myself in the right way and I gave myself the best shot, then I've got a chance of making it and carving out a career. So parties, going out, whatever it may have been, drinking, or anything like that, I kind of just eliminated everything that could be potential distractions along the way, so that I could focus, 100% and wholeheartedly on pursuing the dream.
See that sense of humility that you've got, mate, that you've mentioned it a couple of times that you didn't feel like you were the most talented, but we sit here across the table and you've just been surpassed by obviously Zaha as Crystal Palace's all-time Premier League appearance maker. Like you don't reach those levels unless you're talented, but you sort of sit and say to yourself that you may not have been the best player in your youth team. You also talk just then about going to coaches and asking for their opinions and wanting to learn. And I'm not sure how you feel about it, mate, but I don't think that youth players at the moment in this modern sort of era of football have that mentality. I think a lot of them, and a lot of them might correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of them seem to think that they know everything already, and that sense of like wanting to learn and sense of realism as to where they are at the stage in their career isn't as big as what it was. I think when things like social media or other people telling you you're amazing all the time was sort of a thing. How much of a benefit do you think that attitude that you had towards learning and sort of like the humility you've got to show in your own game has benefited your football long term?
I think massively. I think you have to be teachable. and you have to have a kind of a teachable attitude and spirit about yourself, because you're never too good to develop. You're never too good to learn. You're never too good to kind of raise the bar. And I think once you get to a point where you think that you are, that's when issues are going to occur, and you're going to get sloppy, or you're going to let things slide, or let your standards slide. And I think we're all guilty of it to a certain extent. But for me, I kind of always wanted to lead by example, and make sure that no one could come back and say, "Oh, well, you didn't do this, or you didn't give this 100%, or you kind of skipped this," and what have you. And I think you're doing yourself an injustice if you don't lean on the experience that you've got around you, or if you're in a first team environment and you're fortunate enough to train with the first team, or you're an environment where you've got amazing coaches around you. I think it's silly not to lean on them and ask questions, or kind of try to understand what it takes to achieve what they've achieved. So yeah.
Talk to me, mate, about the process then of we've obviously mentioned that sort of 0.01% of youth players that make it into their first teams, but talk to me about the process of how you go from scholarship, Joel Ward, into probably training with the first team a lot, but not necessarily part of matchday squads, to matchday squad as a substitute, or you're probably travelling to games as somebody who's making up the squad, which most obviously young players who end up in first teams go through, and then eventually you become Joel Ward, the first team Portsmouth player. Talk to me about the process between sort of each bit, and how you managed to, or how did it feel when you went from that youth player who is sometimes easily dismissed, or easily dropped, or easily not picked, to Joel Ward that had to be in the starting 11?
I guess for me, I kind of, it was quite a straightforward journey. I guess, like my scholarship, I saw out those 2 years, and I was fortunate enough to get a professional contract. And actually, that first year of my professional contract, I think 08-09 season, I actually went on loan. So I wasn't involved with the squad. I wasn't necessarily involved with the first team at Portsmouth at the time. It was kind of my scholarship. I'd go down now and again and train with the first team, and you kind of just get the curly finger. So I have to sprint down and fill in, or be a mannequin, so the first team could do what their session was set out to be. But I went out on loan, and for me that was an awakening that you're fighting for your livelihood. You're fighting for something real, and you've got to go from a boy to a man, like with a click of a finger.
You played in the Bournemouth season that was -17, right? So
yeah, so I kind of went there, obviously -17, and I think we were still kind of around 0 points come late December, Christmas time. We just kind of got ourselves across the line. It wasn't long after that I actually got injured, and was out for the best part, I think, 3 months. I completely ruptured my ankle, and then I came back for the last few games of the season. But it was a real awakening for me. Like I said, just to be put into that environment where you're playing, and it matters. It's in a league. You're fighting to stay in the league. And you're also fighting to, gradually climb up that ladder. Obviously, then coming back into Portsmouth. I remember, obviously, when I was at Bournemouth, they kind of spoke about signing me permanently at the end of the season. And Eddie Howe was the manager at the time, and we had a conversation. I said, "Listen, I need to try to go back to Portsmouth and give it a shot at, breaking into the first team, and that's my dream, to play as high as I can and be in the Premier League, etc." And I think, obviously, when I went back to Portsmouth, I kind of was involved on periphery, and then I made my debut in the Cup, and then was on the bench for the first few games of the season, and then I was out for a long period of time because I had stress fractures and in my pelvis, and some, obviously, just development, growth and issues. And then when I came back, I started playing and made a few Premier League appearances, and then obviously the club went into administration and was relegated, and then obviously the Championship season then was where kind of I was thrown in and was kind of learning my trade in different positions. I was playing like left back, centre back, right back, in the midfield, on the wings, which for me was kind of a little bit alien, but also I used to my advantage that I could adapt to different positions. I could adapt and learn, what I needed to do in certain, positions on the pitch, which then I think has helped me throughout the years to understand the game a little bit more and maybe have more of a tactical awareness on how to go about a game.
I've got a nice section, mate, of talking to you about your process of positions and that sort of development of your career going in from one to the other. I think actually I've got down here that you played number 10 for Portsmouth, like an attacking midfielder for a while, and obviously, like you said, you played right back, centre back, left back. But the first thing I want to jump on is sort of when you say awakening, obviously when you spent that time at Bournemouth, because we were in the same car school for a lot of that season. Me, you, Lee Bradbury, Sammy Igo, Jason Pearce, all travelling from sort of that Portsmouth area to Bournemouth every day. When you say awakening, like what sort of was it about? Because I wasn't really playing in the first team at that time. I was sort of a substitute, but obviously you were playing in every game and playing very well, I might add. What was it about that time, do you think, that what did you learn about your own game? And not just in terms of your football on the pitch, but in terms of your mentality of what you could deal with, and that sort of pressure of -17 for a young player coming in on loan is enormous, really. That's sort of like the severity of the situation at the time. I'm not sure how much, obviously, at the time that you would have understood what that meant, obviously, to people around Bournemouth and the club and stuff. But you managed to deal with that, that exceptionally well at the time. What do you think it was about that, about that situation that you managed to deal with so well?
I guess, obviously, I've been blessed to have such a great support network around me, with my family and friends, etc. So that's always been a strong foundation for me. When I think about that season at Bournemouth, I guess for me it was just kind of an opportunity to put myself on the map and give everything and kind of hopefully start that journey of having a career in football. I think it was almost a dream to be walking out, on a pitch and crossing that white line as a profession. And I think, that process was, it was incredible in many ways, just because, I think it's kind of in the process that you learn about yourself and you go through certain different scenarios and certain different experiences. It's how you develop as a person. I think everything that's happened, or everything that had happened up until that date, had prepared me for that time, and then everything after that time had prepared me for the next challenge and the next challenge and the next challenge. So I think you're kind of always developing as a person. For me, I knew that if I could do my part to help, if I could do my part or in any way on and off the pitch, that's going to hopefully benefit the people that's around me. That's going to benefit the club. It's going to benefit my family. It's going to benefit me. It's going to give me the opportunity to go on and kick on. And I think for me it was always about not resting on your laurels, but kind of finding that finding the way to continually develop and raise the bar and get better and challenge yourself, whether that's setting new goals or what have you. But I just felt that this is where I was supposed to be, and I wanted to make sure that when I got that opportunity, I took it with both hands.
You speak obviously incredibly well, mate, about that period of time now, and you can sort of reflect and say that it meant this to you, and that's how you feel. Obviously, in that moment, that's how you felt. But were you that aware of how you were feeling at the time? Have you been able to do that in your career? So I'm interested of obviously giving people a bit of insight as to, you seem really, emotionally intelligent and aware of the situation that you're in the present. Like, are you able to know that at the time when you was at Bournemouth, you understood obviously what it was that you wanted to get out of it and how you were going to do that? Have you been able to do that in your whole career?
I don't know really. I guess to an extent, and I guess that's where having honest conversations with yourself, but also with the support network around you about what you want to achieve and how does life look. Not just in this present, but 5-10 years down the line and going forward. I guess that those conversations kind of put seeds in your heart, in your body, or whatever it may be, kind of that you want to try and get to, and that's obviously goal setting and what have you. I remember when I first moved to Palace, it was kind of like, right, okay, well, I'm 22 years of age. I've had a great couple of years at Portsmouth in the Championship and developed myself into a Championship player, and I want to make sure that I continue to move forward. And coming to Palace, it's a new environment, it's a new kind of challenge. How can I use this opportunity to kick on and hopefully by 25, whatever, be knocking on the door of the Premier League, because that's then the next challenge, or the next goal, or the next ambition, to play as high as I can. And it actually happened in the first season that we were there. So I guess you've always got kind of things to look to, but it doesn't just stop when you get there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Have you been able to do that a lot? And it obviously have you goal setted a lot in your career? Is that something that you've done everywhere you've been, but you've only obviously been with Portsmouth and Palace, so, and obviously Bournemouth on loan. But is the process of goal setting something you think is quite important?
Yeah, I think so. For me, I think consistency is something that I've always wanted to try to maintain, and I think in making sure that you give 100% and doing the basics and not resting on your laurels, that consistency will come. And I think for me, it was kind of a foundation. I knew that, right, I've got this opportunity, I've got this chance, and I've got to apply myself 100% in whatever I do until the day I hang my boots up. And I think that competitive spirit in me has kind of built this almost, I don't know what you would call it, kind of just churning out as high a performance as I can possibly do week in, week out, and that's in training as well.
So let's get into this position stuff together, mate, because it's an overriding theme really of your career, and something that I wanted to really focus on, because I think it's going to be amazing key takeaways for people who are listening to this, obviously trying to develop their own games, is that you are able to play in almost every position on the pitch and do an incredible job. You've done that across your whole career. And you've just spoken about there at Portsmouth, sort of like developing your game and becoming a Championship player and playing left back, centre back, right midfield, left midfield, attacking midfield. All these different positions that you probably have never been taught before in your career and just had to learn on the spot. You're obviously like an incredible, intelligent footballer, intelligent guy, but in terms of like the football intelligence, that's something completely different. And you're able to understand and get things without maybe having to be told about them. How are you able to, give me an insight, mate, into the process of you understanding different positions, understanding different roles, understanding how you are able to use your attributes to excel in those positions? Like what did that all look like?
I don't know really. I guess the way I saw it, I was always adding a string to the bow. Would I had made the appearances that I had I not been able to do that? I don't know. I can't answer that. But by the grace of God, I've been blessed to have played the amount of games I have, and I always saw it as an opportunity to like I said, add a string to the bow, to develop and to learn, I think just from watching football and playing and messing around as a kid, playing in all different positions, even outside being professional, I think I just kind of had a natural instinct of, right, okay, well, where do I need to be at this certain time, or what do I need to do? Where's my body position? And it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be, the right way all the time. But if I can kind of, like I said, get that consistency of, understanding a position, it's only going to benefit me because, if I'm playing against someone, I understand what they might be thinking or where they might be going, or how to combat, their threats. Or if I change a position, then I can, learn and kind of maybe have an impact. And also, I've always had the attitude of, if I'm on the pitch, I'm happy. I'm kind of content. I want to make sure that I give everything. I want to make sure that I do my best. And I'm happy to play anywhere, providing I've got a shirt on and my boots on, and I'm kind of going out there and doing what I love to do.
So where do you sit, mate, on the sort of like on the argument of when you're young and players are obviously developing, you were able to understand different positions just by instinct, as you've sort of given us an insight into. But how much time do you suggest that guys who are obviously developing their games spend on understanding different positions or nailing down one? Or I might break that down as in sort of like being great at one position or being good at many others. Like what side of the fence would you sit on if you had a choice?
It's a tough one because, I mean, I don't know, had I just nailed down one position and that had been it, like I said, I don't know whether I'd made as many appearances as I had, or maybe I would have gone on to play higher or get a cap or whatever it may have been. But for me, I think there's no harm in being able to play in various different positions, and I think it gives you an understanding of the game, and maybe a little bit more of an understanding of the game. I don't know too many players now that don't play in multiple positions. If you're a winger, you're still playing on anywhere across the front line. Okay, they're different positions. You're either on the left, you're on the right, and you're coming inside, you're going outside, you're going down the line, or you're driving inside and kind of trying to link up play, or you're playing up top and you've got to hold the ball up or make the runs in behind and channel runs and stuff. But I think majority of players now have a greater understanding of the game, and I think that is due to obviously looking at it, watching the clips and learning the tactical side of the game, and I think that's becoming more and more prevalent in today's game, that players can adapt, and you see that with City. Bernardo Silva sometimes playing left back and then coming into midfield and rolling in, and Kyle Walker's rolling into that kind of defensive midfielder as the game's developing. So I think it's I say again, it's definitely a string to the bow, as long as you treat it that way.
Analysis has certainly changed the game, mate, isn't it? And obviously, like social media, YouTube videos, things like Match of the Day and Monday Night Football, and all the gadgets that pundits have got access to now, that obviously give fans and people without sort of insight into being a professional footballer, they can sort of gather opinions now on different positions and different attributes. And attributes is something that I sort of wanted to tail into, because how were you aware, or how did you become aware, and how aware have you been across your career as to how your attributes can make you excel on a match day? And the reason why I asked that is because I think it's important, and speak to obviously a lot of guys on this podcast, and they all have different attributes that ultimately add to their team, right? And when were you aware of how your attributes were going to be able to excel on a match day in a certain position, and contribute to successful results for a team?
I guess really, for me, I knew that when I would cross that white line, I'd do everything to help whoever's alongside me, in front of me, to try to obviously do my best, bring what I can to the table, whether that's leading by example or, put it simple, winning the ball and giving it to someone who's, got the flair to go and beat someone and stick it in the back of the net. Or, I think for me it was I come back to, again, the consistency. I wanted to make sure that I'd done my job to the best of my ability, and gave, when I performed and when I crossed that white line, that I knew that I was giving everything I could for the team. And obviously it's an individual. You want to perform to your best of your ability, because that's obviously going to only benefit, your career. But I knew that I could help others along the way. And I think as I've gone further down the line and obviously played a lot of games and obviously got experience, I want to be able to help the younger generation develop as well. And I think, people can get caught up on social medias and this and that and the flair and the tricks and this and what have you. But I think really, if you can excel in the basics and apply yourself in the right manner, then all that other stuff will come. I guess I'm a little bit old school in my mindset at times, and for me, I kind of just want to make sure that I know, like I said at the start of the podcast, I leave kind of no regrets when I walk off that pitch and when I finish in years to come. But I guess I think in terms of the attribute side of things, I just knew that if I could do my job, my role to the best I can, then, I'm going to trust that process.
I'm so glad, mate, that you've just touched on having exceptional basics, because I think that's something that I even try and, if any young players obviously playing at my level or in academies or whatever is ever asked me, like, what is it that you need to do obviously to reach a certain level, and I don't know what it takes to reach your level, mate, but even at my level, like, exceptional basics are just like the bare minimum. And I think people's perception sometimes of that professional footballers are able to do this, that and the other absolutely every time they're on the ball or on the pitch is a massive misconception, really. And almost 99% of the game is literally basics, is being in the right position, it's being able to control the ball in the right way, it's being able to pass the ball in the right way, it's being able to compete or give information, basic information in the right way. And I don't want this to come across as if I'm saying that you're basic, but it's more so that, like, exceptional basics are what has allowed you to play almost 300 times in the Premier League, almost over 450 times in your career at the top level.
Like, I think they give you that foundation, right?
1,000,000%.
And it's from there then you can build. And I've been fortunate enough to play with some amazing players, but again, they do the simple things really well. And I think people get caught up on the whole, well, is that enough? But it is enough. To do those things to the best of your ability will obviously give you the foundation to go on and achieve all that you go on to achieve.
And I mean, having watched it, like, is when obviously you grow up with someone in the youth team, already obviously like in the whole career, always like I've been like, I wonder, like, especially with Matty and yourself, who are in the same youth team and have done so exceptionally well, always sort of got an eye on, like, how are they getting on, or when a game is on and you're playing, like, I've obviously got an eye on how you're doing and stuff, and always been, like, incredibly impressed, mate, with just, like, your ability to adapt to every level that you've been at. And one of the questions that I asked some of the guys that I've spoken to in the Premier League that maybe don't start there, having said that, obviously you made a couple of appearances for Portsmouth in the relegation series in the season in the Premier League, but I always sort of asked, do you think you became a Premier League, or have you always been a Premier League player? And a couple of the guys who I've asked have said, no, I was always a Premier League player, I was just in the wrong level. And a couple of the guys have said, no, I became a Premier League player. Where do you sit with that?
I think it's a tough question, because I don't think there's any. You're not entitled to anything, and and that's the way I've always kind of felt, is that I've got to go out and earn whatever I achieve is by, one, the grace of God, but also hard work. He's given me the ability, he's given me the opportunity to go out there, and it's then almost down to me to execute it. So I never, think that, okay, yeah, I'm a Premier League player and that's a given. I think along the way you develop and you kind of adapt to the situation, the environment, and I think not resting on your laurels and not kind of sitting back and going, oh, look at me, happy days, I've made it, because as soon as you do that, that someone will take your spot. I've always felt like I've had to fight for everything that I've achieved, and I'll go on to do that. I'm still as competitive as ever. I'm still as ambitious as ever. I want to, I'm certainly not ready to down tools and look back and go, oh, well, look at that, what a great career, because I feel like there's still so much to give and so much to do and so much to accomplish. And I guess, whether it was League One, League Two, the Championship, non-league, I would have been in the same mindset that when I cross that white line, I've got to give everything I can. And I think that's in any walk of life, whether it's as a tradesperson, as a banker, or whatever it may be. I think my outlook and my moral compass has always been to make sure that, I can look myself in the mirror knowing that I've given everything. So I wouldn't say that I was a player to fit any league. I was a player that, and I am a player who will strive to be the best I can be, and I will never stop until, I can no longer do it.
That was amazing answer to a question, mate. It's actually quite a difficult one to answer.
Yeah.
I had another conversation actually with a guy called Stuart Sinclair, who's a teammate of mine at Bristol Rovers, and he said exactly the same thing. I thought it was real powerful. How he said, he made his Football League debut when he was 27, after having been released from Luton Town at the age of 18. He then obviously played non-league until he was 27, went to Bristol Rovers, got promoted into the league and made his sort of Football League debut. And he said, I never had the ambition to become a Football League player. I just wanted to be the best version of myself. And wherever that obviously took me was where it went. How consistent are you? And it's sort of asking, I guess, for you to be completely honest, how consistent are you with that, striving to be the best version of yourself? And how does that reflect in your life? As in, like, obviously, like, I know you're a dedicated professional, but striving to be the best version of yourself, is that like a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year thing? Like, how much leeway do you have with that?
I certainly, from the outlook, think of it as that. It's a lifestyle. I think now more so than ever, with having kids, I want to set an example to them, that, I think in life, if we can be the best people we can be, the best version of ourselves, that's the goal. In a professional aspect, I've always wanted to apply myself in the right way. And obviously there's always moments when you go through life where, things slip or things kind of get put on the back burners, or certain circumstances happen, or dips of form, or whatever it may be. And life is never straightforward. So there's always times when it's not easy, and you're going through certain things. But I think, for me, I always looked at it as that, like, storms will come and go, but where you stare during that storm is what matters. And I think, the commitment to a decision is the only thing that matters as well. So if you can commit wholeheartedly to whatever decision it's made, then it's going to be fruitful and you're going to be successful in what you do. And I think being the best version of yourself is you're only really, I think as a person, you can only change your circumstances. You can only be responsible for the way in which that you respond to situations, and you can only affect what's going on, around you. A lot of things you can't affect. So I've always felt that if I can control myself and control the things that I can control and are tangible to me, then the rest will take care of itself. But I think going back to the start is, for me now, it's not just about myself. It's about how I'm an example to my kids and my boys, and I want to be the best role model I can be to them, and in doing so, I know that I'll be the best version of myself.
So when it's an incredible answer, mate, and we obviously we'll post online intros into each episode and stuff. So what you've just said there is probably going to make that was a great statement. During these challenging moments, then, mate, you just touched on there, sort of the one bit I picked out of, obviously, in amongst all the rest of it was dips of form, because we're talking about football specifically, right? And although you are like one of the most consistent guys that I've seen play, I can imagine that it's not easy, and especially playing at Palace and Portsmouth, the fan base are incredible. Both fan bases are incredible. They've sort of got that DNA, that sort of like English DNA of just a passionate club. That always, and probably the reason why you've rubbed off on them quite well was because they just demand effort, 100% effort, right? And that's something that you always give. But in the moments that there are bad results and there are bad times, and there might be dips of form and bad performances, that those fan bases are actually quite difficult, because they're pressurised situations, and fans expect results and good performances. How have you been able to, in your careers? We're not talking about sort of like a small football club. Like these two clubs are massive. How have you been able to overcome all those sort of challenging times and dips in form and bad results and that sort of stuff, to always come back stronger and always come back as, being able to perform very well on a match day?
I guess the key thing for me is having the people around you. I think you need to make sure that you've got people around you that share the same vision as you, share the same ethos as you, but can also have an honest conversation with you as well, to help you, to develop you, to make you better, and to challenge you as a person. I'm my biggest critic, and I'd be hard on myself if I know I haven't performed, and my performances haven't been at the level that I know they should be, or I know they can be. But I also know that, in giving 100%, the majority of the time, hopefully, are perform to where I need to be. But I'm also human, so we make mistakes, and you have the best intentions, and I don't think there's any player that would ever go out there, with the intentions to make a mistake, or with the intentions to not perform at the best level. But life is life, and situations happen, and dip in form happens. But I think when you come back to the fan base, I think I have been incredibly lucky with the fans that we've had. I think they're certainly some of the best fans in the country, without doubt. And I think the large majority of fans across the country will ask again for the basics. As long as the player goes out there and wears that shirt with pride and gives everything that they can give for that shirt, then they gain the respect of the fan base. And I think for me, hopefully I can hold my hands up, and hopefully I can look back in years to come and know that, I gave everything I could give, and that was what I brought to the party, and I can look any fan in the face and know that I always went out there to represent that club, to wear that badge on my chest, and to give 100%. But I guess the biggest thing for me is having that support group around you, that, you know, can build you up, help you, can tell you straight as well if it's not good enough, can challenge you as a person, you know, whether in any walk of life. But I think, I think everyone goes out there with the best intentions.
That's great. Yeah, great advice, mate. And quite often, you know, and I know football, obviously, people need to prepare themselves. That football's not always, it's not always great. Obviously, we do it because there's these moments that make you feel amazing, and they don't always come. If anything, there's probably more lows than there are highs. But I don't want to, you know, we've discussed sort of like how to get over lows and stuff. You know, what I'm really interested in is the highs, because you've had quite a lot of them. You've had obviously the promotion at Palace, in which you obviously played a vital role in that game, and clearing off the line, which I'm sure is just you know, every Palace's fans' dream to thank you for that moment. And obviously goals that you've scored, incredible results, like I know, like just famous games obviously that you've won and been involved in at you know, at Selhurst Park, and incredible atmospheres, and these things are sort of like giving me goosebumps a little bit. And for you to have been the person to have gone through that, how are you able to deal with highs, to deal with, like, I mean, you must come home sometimes and think, oh, that was amazing today, that felt amazing, and then wake up the next day, I'm going to strive to do it again? Because a lot of people would just accept that, you know, let's take that moment in a playoff final where you clear one off the line, you get promoted. What is it about you, Wardy, that's, you know, look, I can imagine a day later you'd have gone, right, no, I need to get ready for the Premier League, instead of just going on holiday for 3 weeks on the piss because you've had the best moment of your life. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is?
Yeah,
what
I think there's I think as when I was maybe younger, you kind of go, right, okay, on to the next. I think as you look back now and you look at those moments, I'm pleased that, you know, you celebrate those moments. I think in the times when, you know, you get promoted, you win games, you do this and that, I think there's something to be said for actually appreciating that moment, because you can quite easily, you know, look for the next thing and not realise, you know, what you've achieved as a group, as an individual. I think it's really important to kind of take stock and go, okay, this is where we're at, and every now and again look back and go, look how far we've come, or look how far I've come, or whatever it may be. So I definitely think there's positives in making sure that you know, let those moments sink in. It doesn't change the fact that the hard work then starts. You know, when we got promoted, it was kind of, you know, an incredible journey, incredible story, because I don't think anyone would have tipped us for promotion that season. I think we were probably more likely tipped for relegation, if anything. But you know, it was an incredible group of lads who kind of came together, a bunch of misfits, you could almost say, who came together and made history. And you've got to kind of celebrate that, because if you don't, I think you can kind of get caught up in the rat race. And when those moments do come, whether it's high or a low, you can kind of get lost in it. So, I mean, obviously, there's an element of me that is always kind of, right, okay, striving for the next thing. But I do feel that you need to have a balance in life. And when you have that balance, that's when you can kind of go on to, yeah, I think you're at your purest when you've got a balance.
See that, you know, you're preparing and getting on to the next thing. You know, I'm gonna twist this a little bit, because when you do become a Premier League player, and now you're playing against the most elite players in sort of almost in the world, really, well, most likely in the world. Obviously, we've got sort of elite players in Spain, but most of the best players in the world come to the Premier League, and you play in a position where you're matched up against the best players of the league, really, the strikers and the wingers. Across, you know, we've probably played in the Premier League for 9-10 years now, mate, and you've probably seen, you know, all the Ronaldos, the Salahs, just of the two off the top of my head, but all these wingers and strikers, Agueros, who are just ridiculously talented, and you've managed to obviously stay at a level where you're able to compete against them, incredibly well. How are you able to do that? Like, what sort of, give me an insight into the process of, say you've got, you're playing against the first version of Ronaldo on a weekend, and you've got to prepare for that, or you're preparing to play against Mo Salah on a weekend when he's, at his most deadly. Like, what is the process that you go through, mentally, physically? How do you prepare yourself to play against the world's best?
Just head it, kick a tackle. Nah, I think, we've touched on it in the conversation earlier on about basics and doing obviously the best that you can do. I think obviously, when you're coming up against those kind of guys, it's obviously it's a challenge, but it's also I kind of relish those challenges because it's you're testing yourself against the best of the best. So it gives you an opportunity to go up against someone who's, world-class players. And that's when you can test yourself and kind of see what you're made of. And obviously there's moments in the game where you're going to, it's going to be a struggle, but there's also moments when you kind of get a lift because you've just, I don't know, put in a last-ditch tackle or kind of done something that's enabled your team to go on and have a counter or whatever it may be. But I think for me, I've always enjoyed a challenge. I've always wanted to push myself and I've always wanted to test myself. So coming up against some of the greatest players in the world is something that is exciting. It's an opportunity to push the limits. It's an opportunity to kind of, like I said, test yourself against the best.
So who are the guys that stick out in your mind? They've been not necessarily the most difficult to play against, but who are the guys, when I'm sort of saying to you the best players in the world that you've managed to play against? Who are the guys that
obviously out? I think even if you're not directly up against them, playing against the likes of, or sharing the pitch with the likes of Gerrard and Lampard and Ashley Cole or John Terry or Aguero or Suarez or the whole host of names is like pretty incredible to be able to look back and go, geez, I done that. But also you're there because you deserve to be there, because you've worked hard to be there and you've got your job to do, and ultimately it's 11v11. I know it's cliche, but the beauty of the Premier League is anyone can beat anyone. And we've seen that throughout this period of time, throughout the last X amount of years, that bottom of the league can beat top of the league. It's not a given right, and as soon as you take your foot off the throttle, it's game over. But I think playing against those players is ultimately it's I guess a privilege to do so.
Is there any one game that sticks out in your mind that you remember that you think that now is like, I got challenged today, but I was brilliant. I really came up and managed to deal with him.
I don't know really.
You probably wouldn't say yeah.
I probably remember the ones that I've actually struggled with.
You remember those more than the
yeah,
other?
to a degree. I always have a bit of a laugh with my brother-in-law because I think it was against United, and Ashley Young kind of just was on fire that day. And you kind of come off the pitch and you're like, wow, it's a tough day in the office. But that's football. You're going to have days like that. It's how you kind of learn from that and develop and move forward. And you can kind of, I think, in those hard times and those times when you are tested to the max is when you learn more about yourself than when you have a solid, great game or like a top performance.
I think that's great advice, mate. You certainly do learn about yourself more in adversity, right, than when you're being successful. We're almost done, mate. So I've only got about 3 more questions for you. And the first one is, what the absolute non-negotiables players need to buy into if they're going to make it as professionals?
I think obviously your attitude is key. I think the hard work, and I guess being teachable. I think learning and being teachable is massive, and I think having your attitude in the right place and aligned with hard work, you're gonna achieve. You might not necessarily reach the top, but you're reaching, or I think the aim is always to bring out the best. We've touched on it, the best version of you, and whatever that looks like is success. Not everyone's going to get the opportunity to play in the Premier League, but it doesn't mean that that's not successful.
What does hard work mean for you, Woody? I know like it could have different meanings for different people, and when people listen to this, so I actually, touched on a reason why I'm talking about this is the High Performance podcast, right? It's really good, and they have some amazing guests on, and Gerald and Lampard have both been on that podcast. I've listened to both of them, and Gerald says I was the best at Liverpool because I worked hard, and I'm thinking, I'm desperate for you to go into detail about what that means, because he's exceptionally talented. Like no one can reach his limits, because working hard for him, like I can work hard, but I can't still reach his heights. I won't be able to reach yours ever. But what does hard work, when obviously we're trying to give people the, take homes, what does hard work specifically mean for you?
I guess it's applying yourself in the right manner. I guess it's being the best version of yourself. I guess it's leaving no regrets. I know that I can look in the mirror or go to bed knowing that I've given everything I can give, and have tried my best. Have left nothing out there. Yes, okay, there's going to be days when it doesn't go your way, or days when you're not feeling like you can achieve that, and there's going to be days when you feel like you can surpass it. But I think if you, again, whatever you do it with excellence, or strive for excellence, then eventually that compounds, and it's those little things, and it's those little details, and it's those little 1% that make up the 10, 15, 20%, or make up the rest of it, and give you that edge, and give you the opportunity that maybe you didn't deserve, or maybe put you in front of someone else. I think it's easy to say, oh well, someone just got lucky or this or that, but I don't think everyone always sees the process, or what that person has had to give up or had to do to get to where they've got to. So I think it's the miracle is in the process, and applying yourself in the right way to the little things compounds, and actually probably gives you a bigger opportunity.
Leave no doubt. It's a good plug.
Exactly.
Last one, Wardy, obviously, thank you so much for your time, mate. And my question is, what advice would you go back and give yourself now to a 16-year-old Joel Ward?
I guess to enjoy it, and just know that everything's going to be all right, whether you achieve all that you set out to achieve. It's okay to fail. It's okay to, I guess, not to not put yourself under the immense scrutiny or pressure to succeed in what I guess the world's view is, because ultimately you're living your life, and you can only be the best person you can be. So in doing that, you'll be fulfilled, you'll have joy, and you'll have happiness.
It's a great statement, mate. It's a great way to finish. One, Wardy, thank you for allowing me into your home, obviously, and welcoming me and doing the podcast. Two, thank you for giving us so much key takeaways, obviously, for people listening to this who want to develop their own game. I think there's a lot of stuff there that you've spoken about that's absolutely awesome, mate. Obviously, incredibly well spoken, super emotionally intelligent guy. So yeah, thank you very much, mate, for allowing us to speak to you and giving us an insight into your career.
No worries, mate. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, boy.